They say fashion is pain. That night, it was murder wrapped in satin. I was 10 years old, half hidden behind a velvet curtain, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big. Shoes my mom said made me look like a prince. It was a Grand Wind House gala. Gold ceilings, champagne pyramids, photographers flashing like lightning bugs. And my mother, Evelyn Dale, the most electric woman in the room. Everyone knew her. Everyone watched her. But no one really saw what was coming. She had just unveiled her latest line, rebellious, sharp, breathtaking. The kind of pieces that made the old money fashion elite shift in their chairs. Cassandra Wynne, Queen of the Empire, watched from her throne-like balcony with a smile that never touched her eyes. Then came the whispers. Then came the lights dimming. Then came the fall. I heard the scream. I saw her silhouette plunge from the stairwell. And then, silence. Security swarmed. The press was pushed out. I was forgotten in the chaos. No one came to check on the child backstage. But I saw something they didn't want me to. Cassandra, leaning in to whisper to a tall man in a gray coat. No panic, no fear, just calculation. The headlines the next morning called it a tragic accident. They blamed the platform heels, the train of the dress. They blamed everything except the truth. Weeks passed. No will, no recognition, no funeral photos. My mother's name was wiped from her own work, like she had never existed. I was placed in foster care, moved from place to place. They took everything from her sketchbooks, her studio, even her fashion house. Cassandra Wynn's name went on the collection. My mother's legacy was stolen in the same breath that ended her life. They said she died by accident. I say they buried her alive and just forgot to check if I was listening. Years passed. I learned to stitch pain into fabric. I wore grief like a second skin. I started designing not for applause, but for survival. Now I'm 30 years old. Name's Jake Dale, a name no one in high fashion remembers. But in the underground, in the warehouses, the back alleys, the renegade shows where rules are meant to be ripped apart like seams. They know me, or at least they know the version of me I let them see. Jake Dale died with his mother that night. What rose from the ashes wears a mask. It makes noise. It doesn't ask for permission, and it has unfinished business. In the shadows, I became someone else. But I never forgot the way Cassandra smiled that night. I never forgot how quiet the room became when my world collapsed. That night, I didn't just lose a mother. I lost everything I was supposed to become. But what they didn't realize was that I was still becoming something else. Something they wouldn't see coming. They thought I'd disappear. But the street has a way of raising its own. I didn't grow up. I survived. London wasn't a city. It was a battleground. Broken tiles, flickering signs, and alleys that stank of spilled secrets. I moved through squats and halfway homes, the kind of places where names don't matter and trust is currency. I learned to sew with scavenged thread, cut patterns with broken razor, dye fabric in bathtubs that never drained. My first mannequin was a lamppost. My first audience? Junkies and radicals lighting fires in abandoned stations. I didn't go to fashion school. I went to war with fabric. The punk scene embraced me. Or maybe I twisted it until it fit. Clothes became my armor, jagged, loud, impossible to ignore. Chains from scrapyards. Vinyl from torn sofas. Spray-painted denim. I wasn't making fashion. I was making a statement. By 25, I was more myth than man. I didn't show up to the after parties. I was the aftershock. Anonymous. Masked. Known only by the name Dale. A whisper in the underground that made people raise their eyebrows and check their closets. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. Sometimes it waits, tucked away in a cardboard box, collecting dust in a stranger's attic. The attic belonged to Kit, a graffiti artist I hadn't seen in years. We used to run from cops together, spray painting truth on gallery walls. She kept one of my mother's old trunks, thinking it was junk. Inside, sketches, patterns, swatches of fabric sewn by Evelyn Dale, all stamped with a name that didn't belong. Cassandra Wynne. They were my mother's hands in every hemline, her soul in every stitch. But the world applauded the thief. There were dozens of pieces, some near-perfect replicas of Wynn House's breakthrough collections, except they were dated years earlier, and signed in my mother's unmistakable cursive, E. Dale. I stared at them in silence for a long time. Something in my chest cracked, not like a break, more like a fire finally catching air. She didn't just kill her, I whispered. She built her empire on her grave. Kit looked at me, then down at the sketches. You're gonna burn her house down, aren't you? I didn't answer. I just folded the top sketch, tucked it inside my coat, and smiled. Not burn, redesign. Because justice is slow. It's stitched, and it never goes out of style. They thought I was erased, a mistake in the archive of their perfect little world. But I was just waiting to become something they couldn't ignore. I disappeared from their sight, but inside, a storm was brewing. The man called Jake Dale was dead. Dale was born from ashes and fury, a masked phantom in the fashion world's gilded cage. My debut was planned with surgical precision. London Fashion Week, the grandest stage of them all. Cassandra's moment to shine and mine to shatter. Backstage, whispers fluttered like nervous birds. Who is this Dale? Some street kid playing dress-up. I smiled beneath my mask, pulling the black and yellow crime scene taped tight around my models, a chilling symbol of the silence they had imposed on my mother's death. The crowd fell silent as the first model stepped onto the runway, wrapped like a warning. Cameras flashed, shocked gasps filled the air. Suddenly, a voice pierced the room. A reporter's shout, loud and curious. Who is Dale? An anarchist? A genius? I didn't answer. I let my design speak, jagged, torn fabric stitched into twisted versions of Cassandra's own creations. Backstage, chaos erupted. Cassandra's assistant hissed urgently, "We have to stop this. Now!" But it was too late. I walked the edge of their nightmare, holding up a ripped swatch of fabric. The unmistakable pattern that once belonged to Evelyn Dale. Did you think you could bury her? I said into the microphone, voice cold as steel. Your empire was built on her death, your fame on her silence. But I'm here to write the truth into every stitch. Security rushed me, but I melted away, a ghost slipping through the cracks of their crumbling facade. 4 months after, I turned the runway into my battleground. Every show was a declaration. Shredded couture, raw edges, and bold colors bleeding like fresh wounds. At a high society gala, Cassandra confronted me. Her voice cut through the music like a knife. You're nothing but a shadow, a nuisance that will burn out. I met her cold gaze, unflinching behind the mask. Ghosts don't burn out. We haunt. The headlines screamed the fashion phantom, Dale the Destroyer, anarchy in couture. But it was never about fame. It was about justice. Each act, each show, pulled the stitches of Cassandra's perfect image apart. The cracks were no longer invisible. And soon, the whole empire would come crashing down. Dale had evolved from a shadow into a force no one could ignore. My carefully crafted strikes were no longer whispers. They were deafening roars shaking the very foundations of Wynn House. The cracks were no longer hidden. They had become gaping chasms. It started with whispers, former employees reaching out, their voices shaky but determined. One night, in a dimly lit pub, I met with Mira, a once trusted designer at Wynn House. She slid a flash drive across the table. It's everything, she whispered. Blueprints, emails, even drafts of Evelyn's design stolen and repurposed. They erased her name to build Cassandra's. I nodded, feeling the weight of the truth burning in my hands. Next came the videos. Secret meetings, hushed conversations, a silent confession in the form of a forgotten letter from Evelyn herself. I remember the moment I read Evelyn's letter. Her words bled through the paper, raw and desperate. If anything happens to me, know that Cassandra Wynn is not who she pretends to be. That letter became my weapon. On the night of a prestigious fashion gala, I orchestrated the final blow. Cassandra appeared radiant on stage, but her usual icy composure faltered as my voice rang through Grand Hall, projected to every corner. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, stepping into the light as Dale, mask removed. You've been dazzled by illusions, but tonight, the truth unveils itself. A hush fell. She narrowed her eyes, voice sharp and venomous. You think you can destroy me, Jake? You're a footnote, a ghost haunting my past. I held her gaze, steady and cold. A ghost? No, I'm the reckoning. You built a kingdom of mirrors, Cassandra. Reflections to hide your sins. I just shattered the first one. Screens around the room flickered, playing the videos, the testimonials, the letter. Undeniable proof of betrayal and theft. Gasps filled the air. Phones lifted to record. The elite audience was stunned, caught between disbelief and horror. Backstage, her closest allies whispered nervously. Cassandra's assistant, Rena, approached her, voice trembling. This will ruin us. Cassandra's facade cracked, a rare glimpse of vulnerability. Find out who's behind this. Destroy the narrative. But it was too late. The media frenzy was unstoppable. Headlines screamed the scandal worldwide. Dale exposes fashion empire's dark core. Cassandra wins fall from grace. Investors withdrew funding. Shows were canceled. Whispers became public accusations. And in that chaos, I stood watching, knowing this was only the beginning. Because tearing down a giant is one thing. Building something honest, that's the real fight. The anniversary of my mother's death wasn't just a date. It was a scar the world tried to ignore. Tonight, that scar would bleed truth. The venue thrummed with anticipation. London's most powerful fashion players, glittering with arrogance, unaware that their world was about to fracture. The light snapped off. A solitary beam illuminated a single gown from 1981, displayed like a forgotten relic in a cathedral. My mother's masterpiece, once hidden beneath the weight of silence and deceit. Then the massive LED walls ignited, a haunting visual symphony. Her sketches danced across the screen, every pencil stroke and seam laid bare. The creative genius they tried to bury. My heartbeat quickened as footage from that cursed gala played. Muffled screams, hurried whispers, shadows moving behind curtains. Then the sharp crack of glass. A voice, my mother's, faint but clear, from a long-forgotten interview, echoed through the room. They think my ideas belong to them, but they belong to me, and one day, someone will remember. The crowd shifted uneasily. Murmurs swelled into gasps. Cameras clicked rapidly. Suddenly, a commotion erupted. Cassandra Wynne, the queen of this crumbling empire, tried to vanish into shadows, her icy facade cracking. Security moved to block her escape, but the crowd surged. Phones held high, recording every falter, every desperate glance. I stepped onto the stage. The mask that had protected me for so long came off with a quiet snap. Silence dropped like a bomb. I am Evelyn's son. My voice was steady, cold, and resolute. I am Jake Dale. Eyes widened. Whispers exploded. This empire, built on my mother's stolen dreams and silenced voice, will fall tonight. I gestured to the screens. See this? These are the designs they claimed, the ideas they stole, the lies they lived by. From the back of the room, Cassandra's voice cut through the chaos. Furious and raw. You have no proof. This is defamation. I smiled, knowing every piece was airtight. The truth isn't afraid of the light. And tonight, it burns brighter than ever. The crowd erupted, some with applause, some with disbelief, but all changed. For decades, I wandered the dark, fueled by rage and loss. But standing there, beneath the unforgiving glare of truth, I felt something else. Peace. My mother's legacy was alive, roaring louder than the lies that tried to silence her. And Cassandra? Her empire was nothing but a fragile house of cards, collapsing with every revelation. As security escorted her out, I heard the final whisper, not from her, but from the crowd. Justice has a new face, and it wears the mask of Dale no more. Tonight wasn't just a victory. It was a resurrection. For Evelyn, for me, for the truth,